So there has been a trend going on in the SpongeBob fandom for long that can be summarized with the quote, "At least it's better than season 6 through 8. This is not only one of the dumbest excuses I've ever heard, but also, let's be honest, not true. And today we are gonna take a look at these excuses made for modern SpongeBob and why they don't work.
Hey!
So for this video, I'm gonna need some help from someone who is as passionate about SpongeBob as I am. I would like to welcome Bored Binge Watcher.
And hello all of his loyal fans and viewers. As all stated, the seasons after season 8 and the second movie, also known as the post-sequel era, have been generally well received by the fandom, even dubbed the SpongeBob Renaissance, with some episodes being considered on par with the original pre-movie seasons. To both of us, this constitutes a strong overrating of these seasons and their episodes. So for this video, we will do kind of a retrospective for these post-sequel seasons, discussing their flaws and why we think they're overrated, all the way to the current airing season, season 13. So to start, we need to go all the way back to season 9, and from there I will take it away.
So season 9 was split into two parts because of the second movie Sponge Out of Water releasing during the season. 9A was basically received like 8 by fans, slightly better than the last season but still not that good. Then 9B came around and the fans did as well. Steven Hillenburg, the original creator, returned to the show and this gave the season a positive reception from the fans. While season 9B is definitely a step up, much to the credit of the great Hillenburg, this half season is now talked about like a new golden age. I'm not kidding, that is literally a term I've heard about this season. The thing is, while the episodes were mostly inoffensive in 9B, they also ended up pretty much forgotten. People love to bring up 9B, but not as much as episodes. Hillenburg's return made sure that we wouldn't get the kind of terrible episodes that appeared in all the seasons of his absence, but most episodes in this season are just pretty forgettable.
As all just said, most of season 9B is tame, inoffensive, not good, not funny, and not memorable. It's so well received because it's not offensive, there isn't much wrong with it, compared to a lot of the stuff from before Sponge Out of Water. However, there is one exception to this rule, and that is the episode The Fishbowl. This episode combines the most generic flaws about the mid-season era episodes. When Sandy gets a book on behavioral psychology, she runs an experiment where Patrick and SpongeBob have to count sand. And she puts Patrick in charge while observing the experiment behind their backs. Patrick abuses the power he is given to be a huge jerk to SpongeBob. Sandy, meanwhile, allows all of this to happen because of science and tortures Squidward as a side gag that is completely unnecessary and irrelevant to the main plot. This might be the one episode that has both Patrick acting really jerkish and repeated Squidward torture without it being the same conflict. Yet it is often overlooked by fans, forgotten alongside the rest of the season, treated as an episode that is bad but not that bad. I would agree that there are redeeming factors to this episode. I like the behavioral psychology team. I like the joke in the end where Patrick can hear that it's Sandy from outside the door, but then goes back to falling for her disguise when he sees her.
Sandy, open the door!
You open it!
No, you open it!
No, you open it!
Mr. Pavlovi, tell SpongeBob to open the door!
It's me, Sandy!
However, it is weird that this episode is never brought up for having the same frustrating and mean-spirited qualities that people hated season 6 through 8 for, or for me personally, 4 through 8. Personally, I do think there is one thing that makes this episode noteworthy bad, despite the positives. While the Squidward torture might be mild, Sandy is not too terrible in her experiment, Patrick's behavior is probably among the worst he's ever been on the show. I get that Patrick is a lazy glutton who would make SpongeBob count the sand while eating both the ice cream cones Sandy offers, but him blending the black and white sand grains that SpongeBob had already counted serves no purpose for him and only makes SpongeBob's hard work undone. And I really hate the ending, where Patrick actually realizes what he did wrong, feels guilty, and then gets told by SpongeBob that he shouldn't feel guilty and that it was science's fault that he turned into a jerk.
I was a monster! I deserve a C minus!
Aw, Patrick, don't be so hard on yourself. It was the experiment's fault that you were such a jerk.
I blame science, stupid science.
That just really made me angry. No, Patrick immediately went to act like a jerk because he received power. There was no transition there. I have the same problem with Rule of Thumb. Only there Patrick was the one who said that the power corrupted him. But in both episodes it is clearly shown that Patrick is just a selfish person who would abuse any power he can get over someone else, and there is no transition and no going off the deep end for him. This is him making conscious decisions, making rational decisions that benefit him at the cost of his friend. So yeah, I think this episode is really bad, like mid-season bad. And I'm pretty sure that if this episode had come out before the second movie, that it would probably just be as hated as Little Yellow Book or Squid Baby is. But because it is a post-sequel episode, a 9B episode instead of a 9A, we need to pretend like everything bad is not too bad. And this mentality would carry over to subsequent seasons. Speaking of which, let's get to season 10. Season 10, like 9B, is very mediocre and tame, which makes it about the same quality as well. To be fair, it's a little less tame, which on one end makes the episodes more interesting and less forgettable, but on the other hand takes away the chill vibes present in 9B that carried over from seasons 8 and 9A, for a more energetic and dumbed down tone. There are more jokes than in 9B, but they usually aren't very funny, and while most episodes are interesting, they aren't particularly memorable. Most episodes are very derivative, unoriginal, with plot points we've seen before. Some episodes are blatant rip-offs from earlier episodes, most notably Housewarming and Plankton Retires. Housewarming rips off the plot of Jellyfish Jam, but with worms, and it has the worms attracted to SpongeBob's body like in Sponge Hands. Plankton Retires rehashes New Leaf, an episode with a twist ending that makes everything that happened pointless. Therefore, this episode is incredibly boring. You know that Plankton is just faking his retirement, given that I've seen New Leaf and I know how that one ended. And the robot angle to the twist isn't shocking or surprising either, because that happened in Frozen Face Off. For the entire episode, I was just waiting for Plankton to reveal that it isn't him but some robot, and voila, I was correct. If you're gonna rehash an episode, why rehash an episode with a plot twist and then do the exact same plot twist? The episode is just very predictable and boring to me. And while this is one of the worst episodes of the season, at least for me, in general none of the episodes shine. And with the majority of episodes, there's no consensus among the fans if they're among the better ones or the worst ones. It's just very subjective and based on whether or not you enjoyed the story. But there's one episode that me and all think is very solid. All, you want to talk about that one?
So, The Getaway was a nice post out of water episode. I made a video a while back taking a granted not very deep look into it. I will stand by my point that this is one of the best modern episodes. The episode sees SpongeBob accidentally picking up a fugitive from the Bikini Bottom prison who thinks SpongeBob is his getaway driver. Meanwhile, Mrs. Puff has a subplot with the actual getaway driver that I would like you to remember for later. This episode is just an all-around enjoyable watch. Its atmosphere is the strongest I've seen from season 10, and the night theme and getaway driver plot works really well to create a moody vibe that I always appreciate seeing in SpongeBob. A not as nice post-movie episode is Whirly Brains. Now, the episode itself is not the worst of the season or anything. I'm not bringing it up because of the overall quality of the episode, but because of a specific thing that happens in it.
Mrs. Puff, we've been dating for 16 years now, so I was sincerely hoping that today might finally be the day that...
Yes, Eugene?
Can I steal a little kiss?
Oh, Eugene, I thought you'd never ask.
Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Puff are shown on a date in this episode, and for some reason, people went crazy over this. I heard stuff like, it's nice to see the writers keeping the continuity from Krusty Love and have them two still be dating, and like, bro, these two have interacted multiple times between these two episodes. Mr. Krabs gotta be the shittiest boyfriend in the world because he employs her in summer job and is a total jerk to her.
It would be a crying shame to a certain someone if this information were to leak out to the authorities.
Right.
And she'll be working unpaid until he returns, won't she?
Yeah.
And this episode has no mention of their relationship and takes place in between these two. It even actively goes against the relationship with lines like this.
I think we can work something out.
Huh? You mean we should go out on a date?
Interesting. No, I had something else in mind.
And for y'all that are crying that was from the bad seasons, and this shows that at least modern SpongeBob cares about continuity or whatever, let me show y'all something. First, we have Mr. Krabs literally marrying someone else, and Mrs. Puff is at the wedding. One season before the scene in Whirly Brains, mind you. And if you go back to the getaway, this episode literally shows Mrs. Puff touching the getaway driver Dorsal Dan's feet and stuff.
I didn't even feel you slowed down. You've got such a gentle foot on the pedal.
Gosh, no one's ever said I had a gentle foot before.
Whoa, 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 hey!
They are flirting like crazy in this episode, and this is literally just 3 appearances after the date in Whirly Brains. And y'all wanna act like the writers care about your cute little relationship. No, Modern SpongeBob is as bad or even worse than the so-called dark era seasons when it comes to continuity. I say worse because at least season 6 through 8 just couldn't care less about trying to appeal to older fans. These newer seasons are just nostalgia baiting, and it's just like that new episode where every character from the show returns in ways that make no sense. The writers want to appeal to older fans without putting any effort in.
And now it's time to talk about the elephant in the season that everyone seems to love and put on par with pre-movie episodes. If you don't know, it's Mimic Madness. To be clear, Mimic Madness is not a bad episode, and I think it's in the better half of the season. But in this season, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. For me, Mimic Madness is an average episode with some good parts. I like the narrator impression, I like Patrick standing up for SpongeBob, and I like the ending scene where the cast members have to help SpongeBob snap back to reality and remember his identity. The bee joke and Plankton asking the formula made for a funny sequence, but there's also negatives. They're not offensive elements or anything, but things I don't like when put in relation to other episodes from other seasons. And for that, I want to compare Mimic Madness to the mid-season episode that it feels like a rehash of, Face Freeze. Face Freeze is a season 8 episode, where SpongeBob and Patrick make disturbing faces despite Krabs' warning that they will freeze, a la Hookie. And when they decide to hold one face for the entire night, it actually freezes. Sandy gives them a massage to help them, but it only makes their faces uglier and downright impractical, as the faces are now hanging below their waist. The last sequence is SpongeBob going to work and being inconvenienced by his hanging face, until Krabs finds out that they made a face and he gets so angry that he gets a frozen face as well. And Squidward gets a frozen face from laughing at the other characters. Most fans hated it, and it is considered among the grossest, and sometimes even worst overall episodes of the show. And you wanna know something? I love it. I get that it's partially taste dependent, because I agree the faces look hideous and disturbing, but to me they looked bad in a way that was funny, rather than gross. While ugly in design, there's no gross details shown on the faces, like it is with the face in Whatever Happened to SpongeBob. But other than that, there are positives with the episode. It is one of the very few episodes after the first movie that actually punishes SpongeBob and Patrick for their antics, and it's not like their behavior was really harmful to begin with. While not nearly as good, it is structured a lot like pre-movie episodes where SpongeBob and Patrick have naughty, childlike fun, such as Hookie, Sailor Mouth, and pranks a lot. And the fact that it is written very lazily, with the characters laughing at their own faces while not even trying to write in a situation where they have an excuse to make them, actually adds to the humor for me. It is low comedy done right in my book. Doing a low comedy episode once in a while is fine. Messing around with ugly animation too, as long as it is indeed ironically funny instead of cringe. But what is the joke in Mimic Madness? SpongeBob making imitations of characters, looking and talking exactly like them, and either repeating their lines or mentioning the most basic trait about these characters. I don't know, it feels like they are explaining the joke as they're making it. There's just something childish and immature about the joke. Pandering. It's like they're making it exclusively for kids aged 5 who have never seen an episode of SpongeBob before. It feels a lot like you're watching toddlers programming. People like this episode because they think this is wholesome and cute, whereas Face Freeze is disturbing and rude. I just don't agree. SpongeBob has always been a show that is not strictly for kids or for adults. And as a kid you laugh with SpongeBob and his antics, as an adult you can laugh at him and appreciate the satire on children's behavior. Face Freeze understands this. It is a joke at SpongeBob and Patrick's juvenile behavior, and to see them get in trouble for it. The joke is not that they make a face and we laugh with them about it, like we're supposed to just see the imitation SpongeBob makes in Mimic Madness and laugh along. We laugh at the absurdity of the situation, at the two man-children having a circle jerk with themselves, at them getting punished. I especially like the review after Sandy has finished the massage. You know there will be a catch and they won't just have their normal faces back and all, but I just didn't expect them to look so much worse than the original face. We laugh at them for having to walk around like that. Face Freeze is a pretty disturbing and perhaps mean-spirited episode, but it is something that I can enjoy and see humor in. Mimic Madness is wholesome, inoffensive and polished, but it's like they rubbed all the edge, all the adult appeal of the episode, at least for me. The narrative feels childish, and we're supposed to laugh at pretty unfunny deformities in SpongeBob's shape. While it isn't really bad here, it will set the trend for a tonal shift in the upcoming seasons. It just goes to show that this episode, and these newer seasons as a whole, think that the way to cater to fans and distance themselves from the mid-season episodes that were considered too mean-spirited and disturbing is by trying to be as wholesome and inoffensive as possible, and pretend like they're exclusively writing for little children. Before we move on to the next season, I want to discuss what I find to be the one part of Mimic Madness that I really don't like, and it does have to do with the immature tone. It is the song. The song isn't funny or cutely silly like FUN, but it also isn't serious enough to be considered a seriously good music number. A lot of SpongeBob episodes have these songs that try to balance serious heart with silliness, and end up as neither good nor funny. If you've seen my ranking of Season 1 episodes, I said the same thing about the Ripped Pants song. The sad thing with Mimic Madness and its Who Am I is that it cuts right through the thing that I like about the episode. SpongeBob friends trying to help him. They pick up cheesy song over clever and mature and funny dialogue and jokes. Overall, I would say that Mimic Madness is an average episode and Face Freeze is a decent one. So while I don't have any problem with Mimic Madness necessarily, I do have a problem with how popular it is and the things that it has inspired in later seasons. Speaking of which,
Season 11 is where a line is drawn for many fans. This line can be one of two things. Either it's the last modern season they like, or the first bad modern season. Me and Bored Binge Watcher have different opinions about this season, and where I would argue it's a big step down from season 10, Binge Watcher enjoys it a bit more than I do.
For me personally, I do really like Karen's Virus and Stuck on the Roof, more so than the best episodes of 9B and 10. The one show that I know about as much as SpongeBob and could talk about as long is the 90s sitcom Frasier, and after rewatching most episodes time after time, unfortunately they feel a lot shorter than they really are, because the plot is so straightforward often. I came to care a lot about substance, whether the story actually feels like it fills up the runtime, at least when there's barely any comedy to be found, which is the case for almost any episode nowadays. Since season 7, a lot of episodes try to focus on their story more than comedy, but most of the time these stories are not fleshed out enough due to the limited runtime and the inability to do arcs or have any continuity on the show. For me, Karen's Virus and Stuck on the Roof are far from amazing episodes, but they do keep me entertained for 11 minutes and make me feel satisfied with what I watched. Season 8's Planet of the Jellyfish and 9B's Pull Up a Barrel were also fully carried by their story, but I still noticed how humorless they were. I don't feel bothered by it in these episodes, partially because they are kind of wacky and have some comedy, but also because these stories actually leave me without thinking about what stuff they could have done if they had taken more time for the episode. Planet of the Jellyfish has one moment where you can seriously feel SpongeBob's dread, but then they cut it off to add Sandy for the not-so-serious climax. It lacks the impression of stakes. Pull Up a Barrel gets to the climax really quick and cuts down the action. If it had twice the runtime, we could see a longer high-stakes fight scene, or more of Krabs' dynamic with his shipmates, showing how he cared for them and their meals being good, perhaps explaining why he ended up as the greedy boss who feeds his employees old crackers. But with Karen's virus and Stuck on the Roof, I have no complaints about wasted potential when it comes to the plot. And I did find enough funny jokes to keep me entertained in that respect as well. Like how Karen imagines the other characters in Karen's virus, or the gag of Patrick falling off the roof and missing the dog in Stuck on the Roof. But unfortunately, against these higher highs than 9B and 10, there's also some very low lows in this season.
So I did a video on the My Leg episode and how it ruined the running gag. So if you wanna hear more of my extended thoughts on the episode, I recommend checking out that video after this one. But something I didn't talk about is how much nostalgia bait is in this episode, and how poorly executed it all is. So people probably saw the episode and thought like, My Leg? I remember that. How nice that they make an episode appealing to us older fans. Yeah bro, that would be true if this episode didn't start with the 3-hour montage of Fred hurting his leg. Like, I think the Mrs. Puff and Crab stuff in Whirly Brains is really stupid, but at least it was just a throwaway thing, and that episode didn't start with a montage of them dating to get the viewer up to speed. My Leg also gets praised by fans as like the funniest modern episode, and if that's true, that's really sad because it's literally just screaming for 11 minutes. Granted, that's most of Modern SpongeBob anyway, so I don't know. Then we have its sister episode, Ink Lemonade, that, it's not a very good episode, I can tell you that. Ink Lemonade has Squidward blowing ink out of his nose for 11 minutes while getting tortured, and of course there's also spiders here. This is easily one of the worst episodes of the show, and somehow its terribleness is still very underplayed. The only time this episode is brought up in wider discussions is when the topic is the worst modern episodes. This is easily as bad as a bad season 6 or 8 episode, but is only mentioned in context next to its own era's episodes. Like, you only hear about Ink Lemonade when people say stuff like, I can't believe such a bad episode came out of season 11, which is that's just excuses, man. And of course, as for most of season 11, or all of season 11, both these episodes have nothing substantial in terms of like storytelling or comedy. It's just dumb humor that involves them screaming. And Bored Binge Watcher has another example that pretty much sums up our thoughts about season 11.
A specific outcome of the dumbed down course of the show happens in the episode Bunny Hunt. This episode isn't just bad, but there's absolutely no mature dialogue, plot progression, or anything else to establish a coherent narrative. Weird, hyperactive and annoying things kinda happen in order, with little coherence or a story. It's not like the old Squidward torture episodes like Cephalopod Lodge or Boating Buddies. In those episodes, Squidward is acting like the straight man, using mature or at least non-childish speech and behavior to establish the plot further than a juxtaposition of SpongeBob antics hurting him. And the plot actually goes somewhere. Bunny Hunt is just 11 minutes of a non-talking sea bunny annoying Squidward repeatedly for no good reason given and with no plot progression. Squidward doesn't play a straight man but acts like a villain from a toddler program. Seeing him shout that he declares war on the sea bunnies like an idiot makes me really wonder what happened to one of my favorite shows. Because this isn't SpongeBob, even less so than episodes like Boating Buddies or whatever where SpongeBob is being an idiot and behaves very immaturely. Now the entire show just feels immature. As much horrible things have happened to Squidward after the first movie, they always portrayed him as a breath of fresh air in between the idiocy of the other characters. As the guy that an adult viewer can relate to and root for, even if that often leads to frustration. Even though SpongeBob started to act very immature and lost all his charm in the mid-season era, Squidward bouncing off of him ensured that the overall narrative didn't make the series as dumbed down as the main character was. This episode is specifically made to cater to hyperactive 5-year-olds. Maybe if Squidward deserved the torment and the bunny in him were more charming, I could pass the lack of coherent narrative off as slapstick, but they all act hyperactive and incredibly annoying, and it's not fair to Squidward to begin with. I'm fine with them doing a genre homage to slapstick within their animated sitcom, but this episode clearly is not. Unfortunately, this trend is not just reserved to the one episode this season. Ink Lemonade and a few other episodes like Squirrel Jelly and Library Cards also have noticeably dumbed down dialogue and less coherent plot progression. And this trend will only get worse in the following seasons.
So this video is just part 1. We are doing a part 2 about season 12 and 13 that will be dropping on Bored Binge Watchers channel.
And when we get to those seasons, that's where the fun starts. These seasons, they're overrated and they're very mediocre, but I can see why people would put them over the mid-season era. But season 12 and 13, oh, they're worse. They are far worse. Those are going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. That will be a lot of fun to revisit those seasons, and y'all should head over to Bored Binge Watchers channel and subscribe there, and I'll see y'all there as well. Thanks for watching.